This is my photo voice presentation for Social Work 505. Please sit back and enjoy the photos that depict different strengths and empowerment. This presentation will be based on the strengths-based perspective. Each person has their strengths and possesses the ability to reach their full potential. The strengths perspectives have issues and concerns. However, the theory is highly regarded in the field of social work. The strengths-based perspective is a relatively new perspective and yet has changed the social work from a deficit and punitive model to a solution-focused perspective. The basic premise of the strengths-based model is to build upon the client's strengths, resources, and supports they already have within their life, even if they have not yet utilized them to their full potential. The strengths perspective rallies clients' interests, capacities, motivations, resources, and emotions in the work of reaching their hopes and dreams, helping them find pathways to those goals, and the payoff may be an enhanced quality of daily life for them. Strengths perspective is a sound and solid theory in the field of social work, and the benefits of the perspective outweigh the concerns and criticisms, which we will discuss later. There are several principles to the strengths perspective. In many theories, there is a perception that clients may not be able to find their way through their shortcomings. The strengths perspective assists social work professionals to acknowledge that the client can overcome and solve their problems and barriers with the help of informal supports, formal supports, and resources. The idea is that the social worker focuses and hones in on what the client's strengths are by looking at what the client does well and what the client hopes to achieve. It is important to note that for the strengths perspective to be successful, the social worker must listen to, empower, be optimistic, be supportive, provide encouragement, and be engaging with the client. The strengths perspective is one of the more novice perspectives in the social work field. Several influential and notable individuals are still paving the way for the strengths perspective. Those individuals include Ann Warwick, Charles Rapp, and most notable, Dennis Salaby. Mr. Salaby has written several books and pieces of literature regarding the strengths perspectives. Mr. Salaby's methods are utilized in educating, teaching, and furthering the knowledge of social work professionals. The strengths perspective began as a reactionary front within the social work profession. Rather than focusing on what is wrong with the client, to realizing the client brought strengths and resources to the table and not just the problem. Strengths perspective focuses on respect and self-determination, which tie directly into the social work code of ethics. Unlike other components, the strengths perspective is not quite a theory or model, but rather it is a way of understanding experiences and drawing out the strengths and supports that the client already has within their life. Salaby's basic idea is that social workers may assist people in becoming aware that they are making decisions and choices even when they believe that others are determining their fate. The principles that make up the strengths perspective are ever-changing and include the belief that individuals, families, groups, communities, and other systems have natural strengths that can be exploited for the betterment of the client. The 6 principles of the strengths-based, person-centered practice serve to guide the direct range of helping. Slaby explained the principles of the strengths perspective are that every individual, group, family, and community has strengths, trauma, abuse, illness, and struggles, which may be injurious, but they may also be sources of challenge and opportunity. Assume that you do not know the upper limits of the capacity to grow and change and take individual, group, and community aspirations seriously. We best serve clients by collaborating with them. Every environment is full of resources and caring, caretaking, and context. It is important for social workers using these principles in practice to understand the client's struggles, shortcomings, and limitations, but at the same time identifying their strengths and drawing on those strengths and the client's supports. Another way to look at these principles are that clients want to know that you actually care about them, that how they fare makes a difference to you, that you will listen to them, that you will respect them no matter what their history, and that you believe that they can build something of value with resources within and around them. Most of the clients we come in contact with have suffered some type of trauma in their life. However, this does not mean that they are damaged to the point that they cannot heal. Clients should be encouraged to acknowledge these traumas and face them so that they can begin the process of overcoming them. Social workers need to look at the situation holistically and take the client's beliefs and values into account when looking at their strengths. Our clients will be better served when we make an overt pact with their promise and possibility. This means that we must hold high our expectations of clients and make allegiances with their hopes, visions, and values. Social workers should strive to work hand in hand with their client to create a professional collaboration. By doing this, both the client and social worker will be the best able to create a successful working relationship. If this relationship is fostered correctly, it will allow the client to open up and share their experiences from the micro level. The social worker should listen openly and allow the client to express themselves. The social worker should look at the meso level and determine which community resources would best benefit the client. In every environment, there are individuals, associations, groups, and institutions who have something to give, something that others may desperately need, whether that be knowledge, an actual resource or talent, or simply time and a place. Such resources usually exist outside the usual matrix of social and human service agencies. Geographical location can impact the available service. However, it should be noted that even in rural areas, resources can be located. The goal of community service providers, social workers, and resources is to work in concert for the well-being of the client. Just as history has shown, society should care for those who are less fortunate. The strengths perspective would be applicable in all geographical areas. Regardless what culture or background you come from, you have strengths that can be drew from to best help your situation. One principle that social workers should be cognizant of is that of hope. Hope is the foundation that any person overcoming trauma must acknowledge and buy into for healing and growth in order to flourish. Like social caretaking and social work, the strengths perspective is about the revolutionary possibility of hope. Hope realized through the vigor of social relationships in family, neighborhood, community, culture, and country. When you combine all of these principles and put them into practice, the client will have the best available outcome. I work in the field of child welfare and use these principles frequently as they are basis of our organization. The primary values I follow are being genuine, respectful, and empathetic. Using these values in practice allows for open engagement and assists me in drawing out the client's strengths, which is directly necessary for using the strengths-based perspective. Looking at the strengths perspective and applying the systems theory application on the micro, meso, and macro level is one way the strengths perspective can be applied. Putting social work practice into play, the client and social worker work collaboratively using the strengths of the client to build the client's recovery plan. The strengths perspective is based on the belief that individuals possess abilities and inner resources that allow them to cope effectively with the challenges of living. Even individuals normally seen as hopeless, intractable, and resistant to accepting assistance are assumed able to make significant strides in facing difficult challenges when assisted in rediscovering their abilities. Looking at the client's story, the social worker can isolate traumatic events and see which of the client's informal supports and strengths can be used to assist the client on the micro level. Looking at the meso level, the social worker can look to community resources to see which of those services and resources would be most appropriate. The social worker can use the client's story to influence appropriate policy change on the macro level. Strengths perspective requires the social worker to engage the client by assessing, listening, and understanding the client's life experiences. The assessing phase serves many purposes. It allows the parties to evaluate the client's values, traits, qualities, and strengths. Another important factor to consider is that the assessment should not be a one-time and done facet. Rather, this should be ongoing and used when developing the client's case plan, which should also change as the client progresses. It is not enough to conduct a strengths assessment early in the intervention and expect that it will effectively support individuals through challenges to their perceptions of personal competence and effectiveness. Social workers should be prepared to integrate the emphasis on strengths into all interactions with individuals, especially during the course of goal-setting activities. As the client progresses through the trauma and as progress is being made, the client can decide the type of life they would like to pursue and what resources will help them to achieve these goals. Specifically, it is important to remember that self-determination is key. An example of how this would look in practice within the child welfare field is a client that has had their children removed from them due to substance abuse issues would first have to meet with the social worker and determine what has happened in the client's life, the underlying need. This may take some rapport building and trust through open communication. Once these needs are identified, it is important to also discover what the client's strengths are to determine how to apply those strengths to best help the client and use those strengths to build the confidence of the client. Also, the social worker, along with the client, would create a treatment plan that would involve outside agencies to administer resources and services. The goal is that the underlying needs are corrected and the client has a sense of self-determination and hope to not find themselves in the situation again. As with any application, theory, or perspective, it is important to look at the deficits to remain objective and consider all options. One criticism of the strengths-based perspective is that it paints everything in a very optimistic outlook that may not be positive. Glitchen had criticized that the strengths perspective is that it fails to define the responsibilities of helping profession to create, through the work they do with their clients, a society that functions with dignity and virtue. Further, the strengths perspective would face a critique that overemphasizes the client's strengths means overlooking the client's problems. It has also been said that since the strengths-based perspective is not a medical model, that there is no scientific evidence to back it up. Some argue that the clients fail to take advantage of the help and rather just paints all of the client's shortcomings in a positive way that has little more than face value. It has also been hypothesized that just because an individual has strengths present does not mean the individual will apply those strengths to better their situation. Perhaps most seriously, the perspective has been criticized as ignoring objective reality. The entire concept in the strengths based perspective is that the social worker can help the client by building on what positive qualities the client brings to the table, along with connecting the client to the appropriate services within the community. Some individuals have even indicated that the case manager was the first person to have asked them about a time when they were successful. While there is a handful of criticisms that have been argued, most of these arguments, in my opinion, could be applied to any theory or perspective, not just the strengths-based perspective. At the end of the day, the work of social welfare is to make a positive difference in someone's life and treat them with respect and dignity while being humble and showing empathy. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation.